There are things about people that no one wants to admit, not because they are complicated, because they are uncomfortable, because once you see them, you cannot unsee them. And once you understand them, every relationship, every interaction, every smile across the table, every handshake, every promise looks different, not worse, just clearer. And clarity, when it comes to human nature, is the most dangerous gift a man can receive. You have felt it. The friend who disappeared the moment you needed something real. The colleague who praised you in public and undermined you in private. The family member who supported your dreams as long as those dreams stayed smaller than theirs. The partner who said they would be there no matter what, until no matter what actually arrived. You sensed something was off. You felt the shift in energy, the slight change in tone, the distance that appeared overnight without explanation. But you told yourself you were imagining it. You told yourself people are better than that. You told yourself the problem was you too suspicious, too guarded, too cynical for your own good. You were not the problem. You were just seeing the truth for the first time and choosing to look away. Because the truth about human nature is not what they taught you in school. It is not what they told you in church. It is not what the inspirational posts on your feed want you to believe. The truth is darker, more honest, and far more useful than any of that. And the man who understands it does not become bitter. He becomes free. Free from false expectations. Free from manufactured disappointment. Free from the endless shock of being let down by people who are only ever acting according to their nature. Today we are going to talk about 7 truths that most people will deny until their last breath. Not because these truths are evil, because they are human, and the man who accepts them as they are, without resentment, without cynicism, without losing his ability to love and trust and build, is the most powerful man in any room he enters. The first dark truth is that almost everyone operates from self-interest first. Not sometimes, not just the bad people, not just the ones you already distrust. Almost everyone, almost all of the time, even the generous ones, even the kind ones, even the ones who would give you the shirt off their back and the last dollar in their pocket. There is a reason they give. Maybe it is the feeling of being needed. Maybe it is the reputation of being generous. Maybe it is the avoidance of guilt that would eat them alive if they walked past your pain. Maybe it is a debt they are repaying to the universe for something they received. The gift is real. The kindness is real. But underneath it, if you look carefully and honestly and without flinching, there is always a motive that serves the giver. Always. Robert Cialdini at Arizona State University spent decades studying the psychology of influence and persuasion. And one of his most powerful findings is the principle of reciprocity. When someone does something for you, you feel an almost irresistible biological urge to return the favor. This is not a flaw in human design. It is how human beings are wired. It is what holds societies together. But here is what most people miss. The people who truly understand this principle do not just give randomly out of pure generosity. They give strategically. They create debts. They build invisible obligations. And the person on the receiving end rarely realizes they are being positioned until the debt is called in. This does not mean every act of kindness is manipulation. That would be cynicism. And cynicism is just as blind as naivety. It means that pure, motive-free, expectation-free generosity is far rarer than we want to believe. And the man who walks through the world assuming everyone's intentions are pure will be blindsided again and again by the ones whose intentions are carefully, quietly calculated. Picture this. A colleague goes out of his way to help you with a project. He stays late. He covers your shift. He takes blame that was not his. He asks for nothing in return and waves off your thanks. Months later, he needs a favor, something that costs you significantly: time, money, reputation. And when you hesitate, he reminds you, not aggressively, not with anger, just a gentle reference to that time he helped you. And suddenly, the frame shifts. You realize the earlier help was not a gift. It was an invoice that had not yet been delivered. The generosity was real, but it was never free. This is not evil. This is human nature in its purest, most predictable form. And the man who understands it is not paranoid. He is not suspicious of every kind act. He is simply prepared. He does not stop accepting kindness. He simply stops confusing kindness with charity. Because in the world of human nature, very little comes without a receipt. As the philosopher François de la Rochefoucauld once wrote, "We would frequently be ashamed of our good deeds if people saw all of the motives that produced them." That is not cynicism. That is clarity. And clarity, even when it is uncomfortable, is always more useful than illusion. The second dark truth is that most people do not want you to succeed. Not openly, not consciously. If you ask them, they would be offended by the suggestion. They would say, "Of course, I want you to do well," and they would believe it. But in the quiet spaces of their mind, in the parts they do not examine, your success creates a problem for them. Because your progress highlights their stagnation. Your courage reminds them of their fear. Your discipline is a mirror that reflects their excuses back at them in sharp detail. And rather than use that mirror to change themselves, most people would rather the mirror disappear. This is why the people closest to you are often the first to discourage you. Not strangers, not enemies, the people who love you. Because your growth threatens the dynamic they are comfortable with. They knew who you were. They built their identity partly around that knowledge. They were the successful one, the smart one, the one who had it figured out. And when you change, when you begin to close the gap or surpass them entirely, their map of the world stops working. It is easier to pull you back to the version they recognize than to redraw their entire understanding of who you are and who they are in relation to you. Picture two friends who grew up together, same neighborhood, same schools, same starting line. One starts a business, begins reading, wakes up early, stops drinking on weekends, starts talking about goals instead of gossip. The other watches this transformation and feels something he cannot name. It is not hatred. It is not jealousy in its obvious, recognizable form. It is a slow, creeping discomfort that whispers if he can do it. Why am I not doing it? And because that question is too painful to answer honestly, it transforms into something else. Criticism, sarcasm, distance. The friendship does not end with a fight. It ends with 100 small acts of subtle sabotage disguised as concern. They will say you are changing. They will say do not forget where you came from. They will say I liked you better before. And what they mean, whether they know it or not, is your growth makes me uncomfortable and I need you to stop growing so I can keep pretending my comfort is a choice and not a cage. The man who accepts this truth does not hate people for it. He understands it. He recognizes it as a feature of human nature, not a flaw in his relationships. And he stops expecting applause from those who have every reason to hope he fails quietly. The third dark truth is that loyalty is almost always conditional. You believe in unconditional loyalty. You believe in ride-or-die friendships. You believe that the people who say they would do anything for you actually mean it. You believe this because you would do anything for them. And because your loyalty is real, you assume theirs is too. But loyalty, for most people, is not a character trait. It is a transaction. And some of them do mean it until the cost becomes real. Until loyalty requires sacrifice that affects their comfort, their reputation, their money, or their standing. That is when you discover what their loyalty actually meant. That is when the fine print reveals itself. Most people are loyal to what you provide, not to who you are. They are loyal to the version of you that serves them, the one who listens when they need to vent, the one who helps when they need a favor, the one who shows up when they need an audience. The one who makes them feel important, needed, or superior. The moment you stop providing that function, the moment you need more than you give, or you change in a way that no longer benefits them, the loyalty evaporates. Not with a dramatic exit, with a gradual silence. Unreturned calls, canceled plans. The slow, quiet withdrawal of someone who is never loyal to you, only to what you offered. This is why so many men feel blindsided when their life falls apart. They lose the job, the money, the status, and suddenly the room empties. The people who swore loyalty are nowhere to be found, not because they lied, Because their loyalty was always attached to a condition that no longer exists. The loyalty was real. The condition just ran out. As the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote, mostly it is loss which teaches us about the worth of things. And the worth of most people's loyalty is only revealed when the conditions that sustained it disappear. That is when you learn who was there for you and who was there for what you brought to the table. The man who accepts this does not become cold. He becomes accurate. He stops building his life on promises and starts building it on patterns. He watches what people do when it costs them something, and he reserves his deepest trust for the ones who stay when staying is expensive. Those people exist, they are rare, and they are worth more than 100 fair-weather friends who only know how to show up when the weather is good. Find them, hold on to them, and test loyalty not with words, but with seasons. The friends who survive winter are the only ones who deserve your spring. The fourth dark truth is that people judge you by your usefulness. Not your character, not your heart, not the intentions behind your actions, not how good a person you are when no one is watching. Your usefulness. What can you do for them? What value do you bring to their life? What problem do you solve that no one else can? The moment you stop being useful, the moment the value you provide drops below the cost of maintaining the relationship, you become invisible. Not hated, not rejected in any dramatic way, just forgotten. Slowly, quietly, naturally filtered out of the circle like a subscription no one bothered to cancel. Dr. Keltner at UC Berkeley has studied power dynamics and social relationships extensively, and his research shows something uncomfortable that most people refuse to accept. People tend to maintain relationships that benefit them. When the benefit ends, the relationship fades. Not because people are heartless, because human social behavior is fundamentally built on exchange. We are wired to invest our time and energy where the return is highest. This is not cruelty. This is biology. And the man who has nothing to offer, no resources, no connections, no emotional support, no entertainment, no status by association, will find himself alone faster than he ever imagined possible. This is brutal to hear, but it is also liberating. Because once you accept that your value in most relationships is transactional, you stop being surprised by the transaction. You stop wondering why the phone stopped ringing after you lost the job. You stop questioning why the invitations dried up after the breakup or the bankruptcy or the fall from grace. You understand the economics of human connection, and instead of being destroyed by that understanding, you use it. You start investing your time in the rare people who see you not for what you provide, but for who you are beneath the utility. Those people are out there, but you will never find them if you keep confusing transactional allies with genuine ones. The fifth dark truth is that most people fear your growth more than your failure. Your failure is comfortable for them. It keeps the hierarchy intact. It confirms their belief that success is rare, that the game is rigged, that staying where you are is the safe and rational thing to do. Your failure validates their decision to not try. It tells them, see, I was right not to risk it. He tried and it did not work. I knew it. But your growth is a problem that they have no framework to handle. Because growth is contagious in a way that makes the stagnant deeply uneasy. It demands a response. Every time someone in the group rises, it forces everyone else to either rise with them or admit out loud or in the privacy of their own mind that they are choosing to stay down. And that admission is intolerable to most people. And so most people would rather you fail quietly than succeed loudly. Not because they hate you, because your success is a mirror they did not ask for. You have seen this. The friend who subtly changes the subject every time you share good news. The family member who always finds the flaw in your achievement, the risk in your plan, the exception to your success, the reason it probably will not last. The colleague who congratulates you with the right words, but contradicts every syllable with their energy, their body language, the tightness in their smile. They are not evil. They are not even aware they are doing it. They are threatened. Your light is showing them their shadow. And most people hate the shadow more than they love your light. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." And the tribe, whether it is your family, your friend group, your workplace, or your community will always apply pressure to keep you at the level where you are most useful and least threatening to them. Not the level where you are most fulfilled, not the level where you are most yourself, the level where you fit. The man who understands this does not dim his light to make others comfortable. He also does not broadcast it to provoke jealousy or prove a point. He simply grows quietly, builds consistently, and lets the results speak in a language that requires no audience and no permission. And the people who cannot handle that, they were never his people to begin with. The sixth dark truth is that words are the cheapest currency in human interaction. People will tell you anything. They will promise the world with a straight face. They will say they care. They will say they will change. They will say they will be there no matter what. And they will mean it in the moment they say it. That is the cruelest part. Most people are not lying when they make promises. They are just overestimating their own follow-through. They confuse the intention with the commitment. And the gap between what people say and what they actually do when it gets hard is the most dangerous space a man can stand in. You have been there. You believed the promise. You built plans around the commitment. You trusted the words because the words sounded right, and the eyes looked sincere, and the voice did not waver. And when the actions never followed, when the phone call never came, when the favor was never returned, when the change never materialized despite a dozen tearful conversations about how this time would be different, you were the one left holding the disappointment. Not because you were foolish, because you were human enough to believe that words carry weight. They do not. Actions carry weight. Patterns carry weight. What someone does when it costs them something, when it is inconvenient, when no one is watching, when there is no reward for following through, that carries weight. Words carry nothing but air. And the man who builds his life on air will watch everything collapse the moment the wind changes direction. As the philosopher Balthazar Gracian once wrote, "Trust the man who hesitates in his speech and is quick in his deeds, because the man who promises quickly and acts slowly has already told you everything you need to know. You just were not listening to the right channel. You were listening to what he said. You should have been watching what he did." The seventh dark truth is that no one is coming to save you. This is the one that changes everything when it finally lands, not as an idea, as a felt truth that settles into your bones and rewires the way you move through the world. Because somewhere deep inside, most men are still waiting. Waiting for the mentor who will see their potential and unlock it. Waiting for the opportunity that will fall into their lap and change their trajectory. Waiting for the moment when someone finally reaches down and lifts them to where they are supposed to be. Waiting for the life they want to arrive like a package they ordered but never shipped. That person is not coming. Not because the world is cruel, because the world is busy. Everyone is fighting their own fight. Everyone is carrying their own weight. And the energy it takes to save someone else is energy. Most people cannot spare, not because they do not care, but because they are barely keeping themselves above water. The few who can, the real mentors, the real allies, the real teachers, they do not save people who are sitting down. They help people who are already moving, already building, already doing the work, with or without assistance. Because the man who is already in motion is the only one worth pushing. The man who stops waiting to be saved does not become isolated. He becomes magnetic. Because self-reliance is the most attractive quality a human being can carry. The man who needs nothing from the room is the man the room needs most. Not because he is cold, because he is complete. And complete men do not drain the people around them. They elevate them. They are the ones others want to be near, not because they give freely, but because they exist fully. And a man who exists fully, who has stopped waiting and started building, who carries his own weight and asks permission from no one, that man changes rooms when he walks into them. Not by demanding attention, by not needing it. Now, I want to tell you about a man who understood human nature more deeply than perhaps any figure in Western history. A man who was not a philosopher in the traditional sense. He was a survivor, a diplomat, a political advisor who watched power, betrayal, loyalty, and self-interest operate at the highest levels of government. A man who wrote down what he observed with an honesty so brutal that his name became a synonym for cunning itself. And yet, everything he wrote was not instruction on how to be evil. It was instruction on how to see clearly. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli. Machiavelli was born in Florence, Italy in 1469, into a world where politics was not a career. It was a blood sport. Alliances shifted overnight. Rulers were overthrown between breakfast and dinner. And the men who survived were not the strongest or the most virtuous. They were the ones who understood human nature deeply enough to anticipate what was coming before it arrived. Machiavelli was one of those men. He rose to become a senior diplomat and political advisor to the Florentine Republic, spending 14 years navigating the most dangerous halls of power in Renaissance Europe. He met kings and popes. He negotiated with military commanders who would have killed him as easily as shaken his hand. He watched alliances form over wine and dissolve over suspicion. He saw men promise eternal loyalty at dawn and betray their allies by sunset. And through all of it, he kept his eyes open. He studied people the way a surgeon studies the body, not to admire it, but to understand exactly how it works beneath the surface. In 1512, the Medici family returned to power in Florence and Machiavelli lost everything. He was stripped of his position, accused of conspiracy against the new regime, arrested and tortured. The man who had spent his life advising rulers was thrown into a prison cell and broken on the rack, his arms pulled from their sockets as his captors demanded confessions he could not give. When he was finally released, he was exiled to a small farm outside Florence. Broke, disgraced, forgotten by the powerful men who once sought his counsel and treated him as indispensable. And it was there in exile, in humiliation, in the ashes of a career that had consumed his entire adult life, that Machiavelli sat down at a desk in a farmhouse with nothing left to lose and wrote the most honest book about human nature ever produced. The Prince, not written from a position of power, not written from a throne or an office or a lecture hall, written from a position of pain, written by a man who had seen every dark truth about human nature with his own eyes and paid for that knowledge with his freedom, his body, and his reputation. Every word in that book was forged in the fire of personal betrayal, political destruction, and the ruthless observation of how people actually behave when something real is at stake. Not how they behave at dinner parties, not how they present themselves to the public, how they behave when power, money, or survival is on the line. He wrote about loyalty and how it disappears the moment the cost of maintaining it exceeds the benefit. He wrote about self-interest and how it drives every decision, even the ones dressed in the language of virtue and sacrifice. He wrote about words and how they are wielded as weapons by those who have no intention of honoring them. He wrote about power and how the men who pretend it does not matter are usually the ones who want it most desperately. The world called him evil. They turned his name into an insult. Machiavellian became a word that means manipulative, cunning, and deceitful. But that label missed the point entirely. Machiavelli was not teaching people how to be cruel. He was teaching them to stop being naive. He was saying this is how people actually are, not how they should be, not how we wish they were, not how they present themselves at dinner parties, how they are when something is at stake, and the man who ignores that reality will be destroyed by it every single time. Every dark truth we have discussed today, Machiavelli observed 500 years ago in the courts and prisons and battlefields of Renaissance Italy, and every one of them is just as true now as it was then. Human nature has not changed. The technology changed, the clothing changed, the language changed, but the wiring? The self-interest, the conditional loyalty, the fear of other people's growth, the gap between words and actions, that has not moved an inch in 5 centuries. Only the costumes have. And this is what I want you to understand. These 7 truths are not reasons to hate people. They are not permission to become cynical or cold or closed off from the world. They are not an excuse to stop trusting, stop loving, or stop building meaningful connections. They are tools. The sharpest, most honest tools you will ever hold. Because the man who sees human nature clearly does not become its victim, he becomes its student. And a student of human nature is the most dangerous person in any room he enters, not because he manipulates, but because he cannot be manipulated. You can still love people. You should love people. But love them with your eyes open. Love them for what they are, not for what you wish they were. Love them knowing that self-interest runs deeper than sentiment, that loyalty has a price tag most people will not pay, that words are the cheapest currency in any relationship, that your growth will threaten the comfortable ones, and that no one, absolutely no one, is coming to save you from the work of becoming who you were meant to be. That is not a dark realization. That is the most liberating truth a man can carry. Because the moment you stop expecting people to be what they are not, you stop being disappointed by what they are. You stop being blindsided. You stop being hurt by behavior that was never personal, it was just human. And in that freedom, something remarkable happens. You start building relationships on truth instead of fantasy. You start trusting the right people for the right reasons. You start loving without naivety and connecting without delusion. And those connections, the ones built on honest sight instead of blind hope, are stronger than anything you have ever known. As Niccolò Machiavelli himself wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. And the man who understands that the man who sees beneath the surface, who reads the patterns instead of the performances, who trusts actions over words and character over promises, that is the man who moves through the world with a power that cannot be taken. Not because he fears people, because he understands them. And understanding, real understanding, is the foundation of every real connection that has ever lasted. You are not naive anymore. You are aware. And awareness, once you learn to carry it without bitterness, is the beginning of everything worth building. If this is the man you are becoming, the one who sees clearly, loves honestly, and builds his life on truth instead of illusion, then you are already ahead of most. Subscribe, stay close, because this work does not end with one realization, and neither do you.